Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome and introduce to you an erudite and distinguished panel of speakers this morning. I first invite Shri S. Krishnan. Shri Krishnan is the ex-chairman of Petroleum and Natural Gas Regulatory Board of India, a body set up as downstream regulator. A graduate in chemical engineering, he worked in a number of companies before joining the Indian Administrative Services in 1975 in the Uttar Pradesh cadre. Besides administrative duties at various levels, he served as Joint Secretary Finance, Special Secretary in Chief Minister's Office, and additional CEO of Greater Noida Industrial Development Authority. He took a mid-career break to pursue postgraduate studies at London School of Economics and Political Science. After the formation of the new state of Uttarakhand, he worked as Principal Secretary, Industries and Labour, and Principal Secretary, Irrigation and Power. In central government, Sri Krishnan served in various departments, including Mines, Employment and Training, Ministry of Labour, etc. He retired from the Government of India as Secretary, Department of Fertilizers. A huge round of applause for Sri Krishnan, who is our first panelist. It's with the great pleasure that I welcome Sri R.S. Butola, who is among us and who brings with him a rich and varied experience of oil and gas sector, government and banking sectors. Having invested over 2 decades in the oil and gas industry, he has deep insights into the entire spectrum of oil and gas activities, including upstream, midstream, and downstream. By leading 2 large corporates, IndianOil and ONGC Videsh, he has had a unique distinction of comprehensive exposure of upstream as well as downstream. He led IndianOil, the largest commercial enterprise and #1 Fortune 500 company during a very tough phase, and is credited with a series of initiatives in the refining, marketing, and other segments. At ONGC Videsh, Sri Butola led the company from a nascent stage to emerge as a significant international oil and gas player of repute. I welcome Sri R.S. Butola to the panel. Our third panelist, Sri Subir Purkayasth, he is Director Finance, GAIL India Limited. Sri Subir Purkayasth, Director Finance in GAIL India Limited, is a chartered accountant and company secretary by professional qualification and has a rich experience of nearly 3 decades in the entire gamut of corporate finance and treasury. He is presently holding additional charge of Director Marketing, GAIL India Limited, and also a Director in GAIL Global Singapore and other subsidiaries and joint ventures. Besides serving a long tenure at GAIL Corporate Office, he was on secondment to Petronet LNG Limited during its formative years and was involved in in very vital assignments during that time. I welcome Mr. Purkayasth to the panel. Our next panelist, Sri Vikas Kaushal. He is partner with A.T. Kearney and leads its office in India. He is also a member of its global board of directors. Sri Kaushal has over 20 years of consulting and industry experience and has worked with leading MNCs and Indian corporates. His primary focus has been in the domains of oil and gas, power, and related industries. He has authored some key thought pieces on the energy sector and is a regular speaker at major conferences in energy domain in India and across the globe. Sri Kaushal has a BE in chemical engineering from Punjab University and an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. Our next panelist, Mr. Suresh Chand Mathur, has over 45 years of experience in the oil and gas industry. He was the founding managing director and CEO of Petronet LNG, prior to which he was also Director Finance of IndianOil. At Petronet LNG, he was responsible for conceptualizing and executing India's first LNG terminal at Dahej. He has also been Director of Gujarat State Petroleum Corporation and Gujarat State Petronet Limited. Sri Mathur has also served on the board of SR Oil as Director, Oil and Gas. He has been honored with several awards, including Knight of the Order of Merit by the President of French Republic, and also the prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award of the oil industry at Petrotech 2014. And I now present to you the moderator of this panel discussion, Sri Deepak Mahurkar. A mechanical engineer and postgraduate in finance and marine engineering, he leads the oil and gas industry practice in PricewaterhouseCoopers India, or PwC. During his 25 years of professional career, he has gained diverse consulting, marketing, commercial, sales, and a gamut of the entire experience in the petroleum, distributed power generation, and marine industries. An acclaimed speaker in professional circles, Sri Mahorkar has spoken in many international and numerous national conferences. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for this distinguished panel. And I now hand over the session to the moderator, Sri Deepak Mahorkar.
Thank you very much, and welcome back to the second session of this conclave. I have such a distinguished pleasure in moderating this panel. We had an interesting opening inaugural session. Corporations presented their point of view with respect to IOC's plans. Honorable State Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas presented his points of views on the policy and aspirations. Respected Secretary Sir presented the policy formulations underway and what's expected in future. And in that backdrop, we have some very distinguished panelists here to provide their point of view on the current issues in the sector and some of the points of views made in the inaugural session as well. In this particular section, we are looking at gas as a commodity and its demand from various dimensions. From my personal context, having presented this survey, major findings, and the survey release, I'm quite excited, not only by the inaugural section, but the break time that I had. And I thought more respondents gave me views on the issues than they gave in the respondents in the survey. It's very interesting to hear points of views, and I'm going to make those and present them in front of these panelists to have their points of view for this audience. Thank you very much. So in the context of current situations on both sides, from infrastructure and availability, in India, gas consumption is where it is. On one side, there is sufficient liquidity in the market globally for availability of liquid LNG. On the other side, there is demand here, and I think there is something which ought to be done in between. And this conference will continue to debate over a period of time. But I thought I'll take our points of views from the respective expertise that is sitting in the panel and start with Vikas on providing a backdrop to all of us on what are the typical markets of India's nature experiences that from the point of view of generating demand and availability that we can learn faster than spending time in debates that we do in these conferences.
Sure. Thanks, Deepak. It's a privilege to address or be a part of this panel discussion, and Deepak and the earlier speakers provided a good backdrop to this. Before I come to your question, Deepak, I just wanted to give a couple of overarching thoughts. I've personally been studying the oil and gas market, especially the gas markets in India, for almost 2 decades now. I must say that over the last 5 or 7 years, it's been a case of a disappointing development in many ways. Now, that's not what many gas professionals would want to hear, but one statistics about 5 or 6 years ago or 7 years ago, we were 10% of the energy mix. We are now down to 7% of the energy mix. Last 5 or 6 years, as a nation, we have been worried about policy issues, worried about regulatory issues, and in a way, probably going all the way to the government to solve the issues and going all the way to regulators and all those things. I think we missed a trick in this whole thing, which is market development there. As we speak, we probably are 120 MMSCMD or thereabouts. Mr. Prakash would have all the numbers much more buttoned up than I do have. But this is much lower than what we have reached in the past, which was close to 140, 150 MMSCMD at one point of time. So there is a lot of latent demand. And as I sit here now, I'm quite excited that, you know, what will take the gas sector forward from here is not policies, not regulators, but it is if we do market development around that entire thing. Now, Deepak, coming to your question there, in some ways there are no parallels to our market there. If you really look at it, our size, the price we want to pay, the low price we want to pay for everything, our alternate sources of energy right now, initially it was coal, still is coal, alternate renewable energy gaining in some forms there. So there isn't a direct parallel to that entire thing and say, oh, this is a model from country A which we should adopt right now. But if I were to pick up 2 or 3 different aspects of the model, on one side of it is an infrastructure development, which is an important part. Even why look outside even our own history, the times at which we grew the rapidly the demand, we at least had part of the infrastructure, whether it was the HPJ pipeline or some other infrastructure like in Gujarat. So whenever the infrastructure developed, the market developed around that entire thing. The second aspect I would want to comment on is the actual market development where the consumers have a choice of alternate fuels. Consumers will choose not because of a government policy or a government directive. They will choose based on economics of the situation. Right now, we heard in the morning, and I totally believe with that argument, that it's going to be a buyer's market in LNG for a foreseeable future. So if we do think that there is going to be a lot of availability of gas, with the amount of LNG terminals which are existing or likely to come up, that gas can flow into India, it provides the right impetus or right opportunity for the consumers to start thinking about taking the gas. And I think that should be a model for development. And as policymakers, as stakeholders, we should be working towards creating a market economy, because that's a fastest driver towards the growth of the sector.
Thank you so much. It's a very balanced view that India is unique, but has a degrowth in its percentage in terms of occupancy in the energy share, and that infrastructure is the key. On your left-hand side is Mr. Mathur, who was a pioneer in creating that infrastructure for making gas available in India. Mr. Mathur, there is a very straight comment from him saying that infrastructure in the form of LNG terminals and pipelines, etc., is possibly what is required to be filling the gap. What do you think will bode for us well here onwards?
Well, if you look at it, that there is a general consensus that India should have a gas-based national economy. I think there are no disputes about it. And almost a decade before, we prepared a hydrocarbon vision, which stated that share of gas in the energy basket will go to 20%. And today, when we have the forecast of IEA, BP, which they are talking in terms of 6 to 8%, and our current share of gas in energy basket going to 7%, by itself raises certain questions as to what happened. All these things we have been talking for a long time, that natural gas reserves are abundant, they are no longer 60 years, they are now, people are talking with the unconventional gas, new finds, that they are available for 200 to 250 years. So we need to look at what happened and what we need to do and what are the challenges before us. So far as one of the impediments, as I see, and I must say that your survey has brought out everything very clearly. Our Honorable Minister spoke about clarity, about what needs to be done. And I 100% support and say what you have presented and what the Minister said. But one thing that I would like to mention is that business as usual approach will not do. We will remain where we are as we have been. Therefore, what has been crystallized, we must have a clear-cut, actionable program for the same. You see, if you look at the infrastructure that is needed is massive. And to travel from the level of 7% to our vision of 2025 by 20%, it's a long journey. So we need to have an actionable program. If you look at the background of infrastructure creation in India itself, so far as the oil sector is concerned, when in 60s, the infrastructure was being built by the oil companies. There you had a system where there was a incentive for creating infrastructure. That was the priority. So that market could be developed, market could be served, and therefore there was an APM. Whereas what I feel is most important, and we will further join, I have many points, is this, that creation of a pipeline, national pipeline network is a must. Market development, to my mind, is a prerequisite. The infrastructure is prerequisite for market development. So therefore, I think we need to focus on that, and you look at it internationally, infrastructure has come and market gets developed. I'll further continue.
Thank you very much for re-emphasizing this. Mr. Krishnan, do you want to take this opportunity to respond to Honorable Minister's question during his speech and something which is very contextual now?
Thank you. I'm indeed grateful to the Honorable Minister for stimulating my thought process. To be very honest with you, I had not come prepared for any kind of discussion, but to hear the participants. But thanks to him, I have done some amount of thinking on my feet as I was sitting down. To my mind, sir, you have to look at the gas business from the two important segments, namely the transportation and the retail business. And an overriding consideration on both would be the pricing aspects. Is the pricing to be done by the government, or is it to be left free? Both with respect to gas as well as with alternate fuels. Certain amount of clarity would perhaps have to evolve in the coming years about this. I understand the compulsions of government about not freeing the pricing immediately, but if you do not think the problem through, it will be very difficult for the sector to grow. On the let me first take up certain broad issues on pricing. Is the elasticity of demand. I am reminded of this advertisement for Maruti, which shows an Indian audience sitting before a space station demonstration in US, where they are suddenly asked, then one person does raise a issue, kitna mileage deta hai? In other words, we have a market which is extremely sensitive to price, compounded by not only the elasticity is compounded by certain signals which are as yet unclear on the price of alternate fuels and the subsidy regime that goes into it. Then there is an issue of capacity of pipelines. At this point of time, most of the pipelines are running below their capacity or below what I would call as a break-even capacity, from the purely looking at it from the viewpoint of transportation. That in turn will depend on the anchor load consumption, which again depends on prices of the end products. Here you have a choice, hard choice ahead. The two anchor loads, to the best of my knowledge, are the power sector and the fertilizer sector. You have to now take a choice whether you want to free the price of urea or you want to control the gas price. It's coming down to that. In a similar manner, what are you going to do with the price of power, the end price of power? Would you want to do it yourself, or would you like to give the regulator a certain brief, a clear brief as to how to go about it? These are issues. Then the third issue on the transportation sector also, which comes to my mind, are the ROU issues, where the government can play a very important role in settling the ROU issues. Without that, a pipeline which is supposed to take you 5 years is taking you 10 years or maybe more. All your capital cost estimations, including what is the payout to for as compensation to farmers, is hitting the screen. You just don't know how to make an estimate of the same. I fully agree that the transportation issue will have to be handled. If you don't wish to fix the price and then you don't want to unbundle also, there is an issue. Then if you don't unbundle, what will definitely happen is, and you don't fix the price, you are giving a predilection to the entities to go for vertical integration. Top to bottom you integrate and try to control the whole business. Do you really want it? Is there a way by which, after doing this, you will be able to give a fair amount of retail price to the customer? Is something that you need to see. As far as government policy, you have duality of pricing. Depends on the source. One is a domestic source, is a different price for the external gas that is coming in, which cannot be controlled. Then there is also a differential price, wherein by which you say that domestic gas, both CNG, both for CNG as well as domestic gas consumption, you will give domestic gas at a lower price, a predetermined price. It follows that the other two anchor ports within the CGD, namely the commercial loads and the industrial loads, SME loads, will have to be priced differently. Will that result in the gas market picking up is something that you need to look at. I am grateful to the Minister for taking up the issue of telecom. The question to be asked is, he is quite right in saying that the mobile, he was talking with reference to mobiles. The mobiles which are originally costing you, when I was still in the service, 20 rupees, 25 rupees a call for 3 minutes, has now come down to a few paise. Did it take place as a result of a conscious decision of the government not to regulate the price, or did they regulate the price? In other words, was the intervention by the regulator or by the government itself? To the best of my knowledge, when all this development was taking place, the regulators were not in place in the telecom sector. So this is something where the regulatory role and the policy role will have to be clearly delineated. One passing thought on the PNGRB which was mentioned. The question arises whether the PNGRB gave some inputs to the government or did not give some inputs to the government, and what were they? The first question I will answer in yes, affirmative, yes, we gave inputs on most of the areas which the Honorable Minister had mentioned. They are available in the government records. The second part, where I will refrain from answering, is because of my old training as a civil servant. I do not wish to write my memoirs. I do not wish to part with some confidential information which has been given, and I do believe that it is not to be shared in public fora, saying I was right, that person was wrong, or that person was right, I was wrong. These are things which you don't mention. Ethically, we consider it to be bad practice, so I will not talk about it. But the fact that I would in defense of PNGRB, say that inputs were given on almost all the issues. It's possible that many of the inputs were just not up to the mark. That's a different story. But inputs were given by PNGRB. That's why I just wanted to mention it. But what is the way forward? That is what you are looking at. The CGD sector also, which is I think a source of importance. The bidding process is not getting anywhere. I need to refine the bidding process as well. One is a nomination process which can be done. Otherwise, the bidding process for which there needs to be some kind of clarity. The regulator cannot fix any aspect of pricing, any component of pricing. But to my mind, the way forward would be, can we then say what is the maximum amount of price over and above the price declared by the government for domestic gas that he can charge? That can be put as a biddable item, That is a possibility. Or what is the amount of price that can be given, net price that can be taken, which will encourage competition in a different manner, where people will be able to source gas from different sources. Because at this point of time, as per the Supreme Court ruling, what the regulator can really fix is the third party access. When a third party doesn't get access to gas, what is the price, that the transportation tariff that has to be fixed? To my mind, that is a hypothetical question, when the third party will get access, given the kind of, when they don't unbundle anything, there's every scope for vertical integration. And once vertical integration takes place, the question of fixing a price does not arise, or there will be compulsions not to fix the price. So the way forward, I think, is to either to start with, do the anchor loads first, free the anchor loads, end retail prices, then look at what can be done, and then look at CGD with the priority sector. Then you have to have a different tweaking of the bidding components. That would occur. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I think this itself illustrates what a complicated job you're doing. And also the kind of rebuttal that you provided demonstrate to us the healthy mechanism that is playing between the government, regulators, and maybe even the other stakeholders. Having been delighted on that front, I wouldn't leave you without a question. Are you giving a comfort to the consumers and those who are aspiring to be, 15% or even beyond the energy pie, that infrastructure plan is in place?
The answer is you can either give a complete comfort to the entrepreneurs and leave the consumers to choose alternate fuels, provided you don't regulate any of the alternate fuels themselves. Then you can have all this thing. Then one can burn coal, or one can burn cooking gas or biomass. If that is not what you want, then you will have to do something else.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Purkasa, we have this infrastructure creation witnessed through your career, and at this juncture we have a market economy which is aspiring to open up. What do you think from an infrastructure creator, marketer perspective we have future laid for us?
Thank you, Deepak. Before I respond to your questions, I would like to thank IOCL for arranging this conclave. I think it has come at a very opportune time. This answer, the question of the infrastructure or the gas market, has to be seen in the context of the global scenario. And today, both India's economy as well as the gas market is very much integrated what is happening worldwide. So we cannot look in isolation what will happen in India in the years to come. You see, a number of factors have evolved in the recent past, in the last 18 to 24 months, which was totally unexpected. The type of the fall in the crude prices causing a kind of a situation which was not witnessed in the last 10 years of the import of LNG within the country. The spot prices were always over the long-term prices. But in the last 18 to 24 months, we saw a situation, a reversal of a trend, where the spot prices came below the long-term prices, and the entire market, was in a turmoil, so to say. It also caused a situation where we had to hold back on our import from RasGas. So these are some of the factors which we have to take into consideration when we talk about both the infrastructure as well as the market. What we are possibly seeing right now is also the initial phases of the decoupling of the LNG prices from the crude prices. So that is going to have an impact on the market as such. As you would know that, infrastructures cannot happen in vacuum. Infrastructures entail investments, and it's not a very small investment, these are fixed investments. And once you make investment in infrastructures, you cannot roll it back. I mean, you cannot just sell off the pipelines and say that, I am winding up my investments. So once the investments in pipelines are made, they are made for 30 years. And it is also therefore very important that, whom is the infrastructure going to serve? Ultimately, at the end of the day, the pipeline system is only a medium to serve the customer. At the end of the day, it is the gas which is serving the customers, and transportation system is only a medium. So this medium may not be constituting a very big cost in the overall delivered cost of the product, but nevertheless has a very important role to play, because that provides the connectivity between the seller, whether it be in India or outside India, to the ultimate customers. So I think given the situation that we are seeing in the recent past, in the past, historically, yes, you are right, if an infrastructure were created, market development happened. But I think that was a different era. We have virtually exhausted that, space which was available in terms of, making the gas available to power and fertilizer sectors. If you recall, when the LPG system was built in, there were 3 or 4 power plants and 3 fertilizer plants which were also anchored with the investments decision made by the cabinet at that point of time. So the infrastructure was not in isolation, but a holistic picture was taken with respect to the evacuation of the gas which was coming in Bombay High. So we cannot forget that past history. Yes, challenges are coming, new, as I said, new market dynamics are happening, and we have to realize that. So as a commercial organization, every commercial organization has to balance both the economic needs of its consumers as well as the financial prudence in terms of safety of the capital investment. So I think these are not disjointed situations. They are very much entwined together, and therefore the need of the day perhaps is moving away from a situation where we had push demand kind of a growth in the gas industry to a pull demand kind of a gas development in the market development. So there has to be a change from the scenario where the investment is made and the market develops. Perhaps that theory is not that valid or not that strong as of now, because we have seen the situation. GAIL has made large investments in the past few years in the infrastructure sector. It's not that there is any resistance or there is any blockade to the supply of gas to the standard power plants that I would particularly refer to. The power plants are in place, the infrastructure is in place, but the gas is not delivered. So the answer has to be found why it is happening like that. Is it just merely because the infrastructure is not there, the market has not developed? But if you look at the investments made in the past few years by GAIL in particular, and try to analyze what is happening, it is the demand which is the constraint with respect to the development of the gas market in India. So I think it's a right time where the ecosystem has to be redefined, where the gas market development can take place. So the other scenario which is happening worldwide, the challenges which are being faced and how to overcome those challenges. There are many areas where the challenges are going to come. If you look at COP21, there is a thrust where the government has, the country has committed to reduce the carbon emission to about 33 to 35% by 2022. So how is that going to happen? Obviously, that is going to happen by a mixture of both, the renewable energies finding a big space in the total energy basket, as well as the gas in the energy basket. As Mathur Sahab has rightly pointed, it's a bit of a disappointment that having targeted for about 20 plus kind of a share of gas in the in the energy basket, we are lingering at 7%. There are a couple of reasons for that. One being, just to make a passing remark, is with respect to the fall in domestic gas production, which has of course hampered the kind of share which we are expecting. As you look, that has been substituted by the LNG imports, and the share of LNG imports in the last few years have increased from about 4 years back from 29% to now 40%, and maybe this year it will be more than that. So what is it trying to show? It is trying to show that we have a constraint on the domestic gas availability, which perhaps put a break in the gas development within the country, but that has been to a large extent mitigated by imports. But the imported price and the domestic price are not the same. So therefore there is a huge resistance in terms of accepting the imported price. Fortunately, because of the fall in crude prices, and as I said, the spot prices have come down. So again, a window of opportunity is increasing. So again, a lot of ecosystem has to work. The government has also come forward in terms of the power pooling arrangement, which has given a fillip to the gas demand within the country by about close to 9 to 10 million cubic meters of day in the power sector, particularly the standard power sector. Similarly, by virtue of this pooling mechanism in the fertilizer sector, again 5 to 6 million cubic meters of gas increased volume has been seen. So these are positive indication. Again, in terms of government initiative to make the contractual path as for interstate sale, again is a welcome development. So we see a mixture of challenges, as well as on the other hand we see opportunities or resolutions gradually building up in the horizon. So that is how I will respond to this particular question.
Thank you so much.
Maybe a lengthy answer, but I thought that let me take this opportunity.
I would take that as an elaborate answer than a lengthy one. Thank you so much, Mr. Purkast, and it would be a better sentence that you closed on to transition to Mr. Butola. But just before that, I wanted to let audience know that we have about 7 minutes left for this panel. We do keep some time for maybe a couple of questions from the audience, so keep your questions ready. We'll try and see as many as we can want it in detail answers. And I have an important question to ask after Mr. Butola comes about. But considering all this that has been said and Mr. Purkasta's observation that it's going to be a pull market, domestic gas production is a challenge, sir. And what could have caused this?
Thank you, Deepak. I would just go back to what Mr. Krishnan and other members, including Mr. Purkasta, said, and the Honorable Minister also said. So I would begin with saying that we have a rich set of experience behind us now. We have seen growth. The Honorable Minister mentioned in the telecom, and Mr. Krishnan mentioned that pricing is at the core. If you want fast-track development, etc., I think there is no better mechanism than the forces of the market to be allowed to work properly. And the experience worldwide, including in India, has been that if the forces of market work, the cost ultimately comes down. So that's something, whether it has been addressed or not, I do hope that with the new pricing which has been announced in the budget, a beginning has been made, and it will at least make some of the imported LNG, workable given the global prices, etc. And if we have this new formula in place now for the new discoveries, and most of the discoveries that will be from deep water, etc., etc., because the discoveries that have been made or likely to be made are there. But if I am to draw your attention and the attention to our audience to the electricity sector, where again great amount of progress has been made, and as Mr. Purkasta mentioned that some of the issues in relation to the pricing, etc., of the electricity with the funding gap being provided by the government have also been resolved. So let's begin with the policy and regulation, and let's look at the electricity. I was also at some other workshop like this, and there are people from the electricity sector, and in electricity sector, one thing, and this relates to your question, one of your question, and you had perhaps 10 respondents. The set of the people who were asked question for this survey were perhaps 10 or so. And one of the question, which is the crucial question, and Mr. Krishnan also alluded, that, unbundling should be done first or it can wait. And the answer was that it should wait. Clearly, who are those 10 people? They're the existing monopoly holders. So they have a vested interest, pardon my using hard words, but they have an interest in continuing their monopoly on. So wherever you look, and if you look in India, the electricity sector, the Act itself says a transporter can't be a marketer. The Power Grid Corporation, which is part of NTPC, was broken out, and its mandate is only to add to the transmission lines, etc. It's not a generator, it's not a marketer, and it will not be because the Act prohibits that. Can we draw from these experiences? We have succeeded in electricity sector. Can we draw from this? And I think this is, your answer. I'm deliberately mentioning this. I want you to also get the right in your survey for the purpose of taking up with the government until we resolve this issue. It's not question of certain companies, etc., etc. But if you want to really resolve the issue, you will have to address this question, that is the Electricity Act gives us a right reference to deal with the issues that we have on hand. Pricing, I don't want to dwell. Mr. Krishnan has already mentioned pricing is something. And then on the gas pipelines also, as has been said by Mr. Purkasta, that capacity a lot of work has been done in the past. No doubt, a lot of progress has been made in the past, and the gas pipelines are not. This is often the complaint of the transport companies, gas transport companies, that utilization is not there. It's below 30% perhaps or so, etc., etc. But some of the pipelines are full capacity utilization also. So you need to look, if you really want, there is no denying the fact, the choice of alternate fuels, etc. But if you visualize a long-term future, you will see that gas will have to play an important role. In our country, because we are urbanizing, so a lot of urbanization will happen. That itself will call for more availability of the gas. The smart city is one of the issue, etc. But the carbon pricing in future, if at all it comes, whether it is in terms of pricing or it is in terms of some other indirect methods, whereby some of the fuels which has a higher carbon number will perhaps will have a little disadvantage in terms of even pricing and market reach over gas. So gas will have to, the basic point I want to, gas will have to grow, and we need to look at it. We need to let it work. So what do we do? If we agree that, the conflict issue or has to be resolved, if we begin with that, then today what happens? IndianOil wants to build a pipeline, GSPC wants to build a Mehsana Bhatinda. We come out with that. Or we want to build another pipeline, we come out with a proposal, we go to PNGRB. PNGRB invites no objection, etc., and then it allows the bidding process to go on, etc., etc. Some of the pipelines were also, of course, planned. But I would think again that, and this was discussed in the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, I recall when I used to work with IndianOil, it was discussed at some point of time that, and there was a proposal, not in a very advanced stage, maybe a thought process or concept, that there should be a centralized gas transport company of India. Basically, if you look at national highway, there is a need. Where do you want gas market? Where are the gas market? Where is the availability? What's our priority? Where do you want? And you set your priorities rather than letting the people ask that we'll build a pipeline here, etc., etc. Let the government prioritize this also, and government fixes all the problem of making the gas available, etc., etc. And then, bids are invited, etc. You could go for PPP, and you also mentioned a very good point, and which is being, sorted to in the electricity sector, is the viability gap funding. I mean, the pipelines which make this authority or this transport company, gas transport company of India, which plans centrally about the gas grid, or et cetera, and it invites bids, private players can join. It can, there could be PPP model, there could be in some of the poorer areas or far where the government's priority is there. There can be VGF funding also by the government, and the infrastructure is built. One more thing, if you really want to build, I mean, we are expecting a complete free play of the market forces as far as the pricing is concerned. But if there is a phased approach, as the government has said, in the budget, that there will be calibrated approach, I would think we'll also have to create, because discovery of the price, to be through a transparent method is something which is very important. And we need to create a gas hub. Even power, I'm again coming back to the electricity sector, the kind of trade which happens on the power exchange. You can buy 1 megawatt, you can buy 1,000 megawatt on the same day. Sometimes you require more, sometimes. That's the kind, and the gas hub, I mean, it's possible to have a transparent discovery of the prices through a gas hub. You allow some, I mean, this is just a thought, that you allow some of the domestic gas, let's say 25%, 40%, whatever percentage you decide, that it can be freely sold, etc. And the larger 75% or 60% still goes to the priority sector with the government or utilization policy, which the government had decided, fertilizer or power, etc. And imported gas. So if you are to begin with, let's say at Dahej or Hazira, a gas hub, and this could be, that means you are allowing this gas, the infrastructure will come, the imported LNG will come, some of the domestic LNG will come, there will be bidders, like Power Trading Company of India. Why can't you create, to begin, who will be the market? If you you need to create a physical hub, that means physical gas should come there, imported LNG comes, domestic gas is contributed by way of 25–40% from the domestic production to this exchange or this hub, and then you need to create market makers because banks or counterparties will not immediately come. So Power Trading Corporation against the Electricity Corporation, it becomes a market maker. It supplies 1 megawatt to somebody, it supplies 1,000 megawatt to somebody, etc., etc. It supplies less than 100,000 cubic meter of gas to somebody. It supplies large bulk quantity also. And then, but you also, there is a power, systems development company, which looks at the back end of it and ensures that there is transparency all across. So I think there is a good amount of learning, and to me also I was lucky to be there at those discussions where people from electricity sector came, and it gave me a lot of ideas that how the problem of the gas, could perhaps, my own view, could perhaps also be resolved. So I would end with this. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. We have the constraint of panel time, but Mr. Mathu seems to be...
Yeah, I just wanted to make another point, and that's also in context of what the Honorable Minister was saying. There is a great scope for shifting from oil usage to natural gas. I don't think the kind of attention that was needed has been paid to it. And if I may recall, almost 5 years back, PwC had come out with a study, and at that point of prices and differential between crude oil and the LNG prices, the saving at 10%, conversion of 10% was giving the nation a saving of about 6 to 7 billion US dollars. Now, if we are looking at natural gas to be used for CNG, PNG, transportation, railways, all that, this is going to, this requires a huge infrastructure, which perhaps can be done through a centralized model created by the government. And have we taken advantage of the low oil prices by using some part of money to create this centralized infrastructure? We have talked about national pipeline grid. So if we are looking that we will go 2025 and reach this 20%, unless and until we have a centralized model, we will not be able to achieve it. And for environmental reasons, I think transportation sector should use natural gas in a big way.
Thank you very much. May I now open up to the floor for any questions to the panelists? We have time constraint, but can maybe take one or two. Right. I can't see any hands going up, but I have an important question to ask. Mr. Krishnan, what's the role for private sector in the current context? I heard your comments about monolithic companies getting created, roles of companies being played. So Butala was very vocal on this. What's the role for private sector in current, not only infrastructure, but the whole of the value chain?
As per the Act and as per the government's policy, private sector has an important role to play, and by corollary, government's role will have to be limited. So this is one thing that's come out. In which case, as the Honorable Minister had also mentioned, if you want the infrastructure first, one way of handling it is opening infrastructure both to private as well as public sector by means of an open and transparent method, by which you can say that a person who asks for least amount of viability gap funding, he will get the job of executing the pipeline without any caveats thrown into it. That's one way of looking at it. The other option, of course, is that you take what Mr. Butala had also mentioned, that let one company to start with deal with the creation of a backbone hub of the transmission. That is, you can put transmission completely given to one company, and they can be asked to create the whole infrastructure backbone. And from that point onwards, once you create a central hub, unfortunately or fortunately, a central hub, there are only two links missing in the overall natural gas pipeline. One would be from the Assam side, linking to Baruni, and the other one is between what is the Haldia to Jagdishpur pipeline, going further down, and then one small link that also is coming up now, or at least it's in the part of building process. So to my mind, it's a little late in the day to look at a centralized transportation company, unless you want to say that whatever assets are available with different companies should be given to one party. If that is what you are looking at, you have a different situation. Then it begs the question, do you still need a whole lot of trunk lines running through the country? What about the Mehsana-Bathinda pipeline? What about the other pipelines? These also would have to come up and crisscrossing the country before we are able to really have a gas network. Country is too big to only have a circular ring around it, and then we will be able to take off branch lines from here and there. So we would need that also. So if you ask me a question, probably of the two options that are available, you could perhaps look at a transparent process by which you throw open infrastructure development both to public and private sector, and give them a clear mandate as to what is it that will be underwritten by the country.
Thank you very much. Vikas, can we have your last word on private sector?
The way I see the gas market stepping back, not going into the details which Mr. Krishnan was saying, there are three pivots of the gas market. The market side of it, the consumer side of it, infrastructure and source. I see private sector playing a role in all three. The market is going to be developed if more and more people take choices of fuels. I met a couple of people here who are suppliers of LNG. They are out here because there is a role to be played there. And as Mr. Krishnan mentioned, parts of infrastructure, whether it is LNG terminals, pipelines, last mile can be developed there. So those are the three core pivots in the part of the gas value chain. There are two other important roles private sector could play, which is on the enabler side. One is on the services side. There is going to be an era of service companies coming up, service infrastructure supports coming up. That's a good play, and somebody in the previous session there was mentioned about startup funds, etc. That's a place it could be done. Second, technology. That's another play private sector could play. So I see that as a right field, and I actually see if we want to see a vibrant gas sector, markets have to be developed. Each of the stakeholders, government-owned organizations, private sector, multinationals, they all have a role to play in that entire thing.
Thank you so very much. With this, I wish to take permission to close this panel by concluding in a manner to say that the panelists started off with saying that we haven't performed as we should have. We could have done much better. There is an acknowledgement of the fact that infrastructure creation is required, and that there is a chance that monopolistic behaviors will very strongly play into this, and there are signs of all this taking place. We also heard the experience of GAIL with respect to how markets have swung in terms of commodity availability on consumer side, and finally the role of private sector is strong for gas to come in. Thank you very much, panelists, for being on this panel. And may I request the audience to laud them with a round of applause, please. Thank you.
I thank all the panelists and the moderator for the vibrant and open discussions on this very pertinent theme, which is also the theme for this conclave. And I now request Director Planning and Business Development, IndianOil, Shri Debashish Sen, to kindly come up on stage and present mementos to all our speakers and the moderator as a token of our appreciation, beginning with Shri S. Krishnan. Shri R.S. Butola. Shri Subir Purkayast. Shri Vikas Kaushal. Shri S.C. Mathur. And last but not the least, our very effective moderator, Shri Deepak Mahorkar. A group photograph to capture this moment with all the panelists, the moderator, and Director Planning and Business Development. Thank you, gentlemen. And with this, we wrap up the panel discussion and will be starting the first session of this conclave in a short while. In fact, in the next 5 minutes, we'll be beginning with the next session. Thank you all very much.